Hello everyone, and welcome to Vale of Hearts, a place where love finds its way through the quietest corners of the soul. Today, I want to tell you the story of Meera Jensen, an ordinary woman with an extraordinary heart. On a cold, sleepless night, when hope was slipping through her fingers, she sent a desperate text asking for a few dollars to buy baby formula. But one wrong number changed everything, and led her message straight into the life of a man who the world believed had forgotten how to love. From that single mistake, an invisible thread began to weave their worlds together. Fragile, unexpected, and destined. So sit back, take a deep breath, and let your heart listen to the story of threads of fate. Snow drifted past the cracked window pane, blurring the edges of the old Chicago neighborhood into a silent haze of white. Inside a one-bedroom apartment on the 4th floor, Meera Jensen sat at the kitchen table, a thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The radiator clanked once every few minutes, like an old heart refusing to give up. On the sofa, 2-year-old Noah whimpered softly in his sleep. His cheeks were flushed, and his tiny hands clutched a bottle that had been empty for hours. Meera's eyes burned, not from the cold, but from the helplessness that came with it. She used to work in a laboratory, handling microscopes and chemical assays with the precision of someone who believed the world could be fixed by logic. Now, logic didn't pay rent. It didn't buy baby formula. She checked her phone. The bank app showed $3.48. That number had haunted her for days. A gust of wind rattled the window, and Noah stirred again. "Mama," he murmured, half asleep. "I'm here, baby," she whispered, pressing her lips to his forehead. Her voice trembled, part lullaby, part prayer. It was past midnight when she finally sat back down, phone in hand. Her sister Elena had helped before, but Meera hated asking again. Still, pride didn't fill a bottle. Her thumbs moved quickly. "Hey, I hate to ask, but could you lend me $50? I just need to buy formula for Noah. I'll pay you back Friday." She pressed send. A long exhale left her chest, and for a moment she felt lighter. But a minute passed, then 2. No reply. She sent another. "Elena? Please." Still nothing. Meera rubbed her face, exhaustion sinking into her bones. Maybe Elena was asleep. Maybe she'd help in the morning. But then her phone buzzed, unknown number. Her breath hitched. "Is your baby okay?" She frowned. That wasn't her sister's tone. "Who is this?" She typed, a pause. Then another message appeared. "You texted the wrong number." Her stomach dropped. The wrong number. The message, everything, had gone to a stranger. Mortified, she replied quickly, "Oh God, I'm so sorry." "Please ignore that. It was meant for my sister." No answer came. She set the phone face down, covered her eyes with one hand, and laughed bitterly under her breath. Even her mistakes found a way to humiliate her. Outside, the snow thickened. The streetlights glowed faintly through the curtain of white. Meera sat there, the silence pressing against her ribs, until fatigue finally took her. Somewhere across the city, in a penthouse that overlooked the frozen skyline, Jackson Albright couldn't sleep either. The city below looked like circuitry from his vantage point, tiny dots of light connected by dark streets. He often thought it resembled his life, efficient, illuminated, and utterly empty. The message appeared on his phone just as he was pouring himself a drink. He almost ignored it, assuming it was spam. But something about it, the rawness of the words, stopped him. "Could you lend me $50? I just need to buy formula for Noah." He read it again. There was no scam, no hook, just a quiet desperation that felt real. Jackson sat down, the glass untouched. He'd spent the last 3 years avoiding anything that looked like emotion. Since losing his wife to a medical error, he had become an expert at detachment, efficient, analytical, safely numb. But now, a single text from a stranger had cracked something open. He typed back before he could stop himself. "Is your baby okay?" He waited. The reply came almost instantly. Apology, embarrassment, retreat. He should have left it there. But he didn't. Instead, he opened his banking app. Without thinking twice, he sent $5,000 to the number. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment. Then he added a message. "Take care of Noah." He stared at the screen for a long time after pressing send, unsure what had just compelled him. Then he set the phone down beside the untouched drink and turned toward the window again. For the first time in years, the city lights below seemed to breathe. In another part of Chicago, Meera's phone buzzed on the table. Half asleep, she blinked, confused, and reached for it. Her breath caught when she saw the notification. Deposit received, $5,000. Her heart thudded painfully. She scrolled, thinking it was a mistake, a cruel glitch. But then she saw the message, "Take care of Noah." Her hand flew to her mouth. For a second, the world tilted. Then tears came, sudden, unstoppable. Not the kind that came from sadness, but from the shock of being seen when you least expect it. She didn't know who he was. Didn't know what to say. The snow outside fell heavier, muffling the sound of the city until it felt like the world had stopped just for her. She walked to the window, holding the phone close to her chest. The light from the street lamp flickered, catching the reflection of her tired eyes in the glass. Somewhere out there, someone had chosen to be kind, not out of obligation, not for recognition, but simply because they could. For the first time in months, Meera allowed herself to hope. She turned toward Noah, asleep and peaceful now, and whispered softly, "Maybe there are still good people, baby. Maybe our luck's not gone yet." Outside, the snow kept falling, quiet, endless, forgiving, and in two different corners of the same Siam. Morning arrived slowly over Chicago, soft and colorless, the kind of light that seeps into a room without asking. Snow still blanketed the city, quiet and indifferent. Inside her small apartment, Meera sat at the edge of her bed, staring at the screen of her phone. The number was still there, 5,000, clear, unshaken, as though daring her to question it again. She had refreshed the banking app at least 10 times since dawn, convinced that any second, the universe would correct itself and the number would disappear. But it didn't. Meera wrapped her cardigan tighter around her shoulders, heart split between awe and suspicion. "No one just sends $5,000, she whispered, more to herself than to Noah, who sat on the floor chewing on his toy giraffe. Her rational mind went through every scenario: scam, fraud, clerical error, divine accident. But none fit. The message had been too personal. Take care of Noah. Whoever he was, he knew what that meant. She poured herself a cup of bitter instant coffee, sat by the frosted window, and decided to find out. She opened her laptop, the old one that wheezed like a dying animal, and started searching. The phone number led nowhere. No social media, no public listing, not even a hint of a name. Whoever this stranger was, he existed like a ghost. By the time afternoon rolled in, Meera had given up. She leaned back, rubbing her eyes. Maybe he didn't want to be found. Still, she couldn't shake the thought. Why me? Across the city, Jackson Albright sat in a conference room made of glass and silence. His team spoke in numbers and forecasts, but his mind drifted elsewhere, to a message sent by mistake, and to the woman behind it. He'd told himself it didn't matter, that his late-night act of generosity was just impulse. But the truth was, he hadn't felt anything that real in years. Mr. Albright, his assistant Ava, broke the trance. The financial projections, postpone the meeting, he said quietly. Ava blinked. Excuse me? Tomorrow. Tell them I'm done for today. He didn't look up as she left. His gaze lingered on his phone. There it was on her number. Just a string of digits, but somehow it felt alive. He typed one sentence, hesitated, then hit send. Did Noah like the toy giraffe? Meera nearly spilled her coffee when the message arrived. Her eyes widened. How the... She glanced around the room like someone might be watching. He knows about the giraffe? She read it again. The text was harmless, even kind, but it felt intimate in a way that unsettled her. She typed back carefully, "How do you know about that?" A reply came quickly. "You accidentally sent me the receipt from the store." She flushed red. "Oh my God." It was a good choice, he added. "Kids like giraffes." Meera bit her lip, unsure if she should laugh or block him. Against her better judgment, she laughed. "You still haven't told me who you are." Just someone who believes in small miracles. She rolled her eyes. Small miracles don't usually cost $5,000. After a pause, the next message appeared. The best ones always do. For the first time since losing her job, Meera smiled without forcing it. That night snow fell again, thicker this time. She sat cross-legged on her couch, Noah asleep beside her, and decided to test him, whoever he was. She texted, "I used some of your mysterious money to buy pizza. Should I expect a refund policy if it's cold?" Seconds later, her phone lit up. Only if the pizza's bad. Otherwise, no returns. She laughed out loud, the kind of laugh that startled her because it had been gone so long. "So you're funny, too," she typed. "Sometimes," he replied. "Mostly on accident." Meera shook her head, still smiling. "Unbelievable," she whispered. In the Helix Core penthouse, Jackson sat in front of the massive windows overlooking the city, the glow of the phone screen painting his face in pale light. He hadn't smiled like this since. He couldn't remember when. His wife Claire had once told him that kindness was just another form of courage. He'd forgotten how it felt, to care without reason, to reach out without knowing why. But this stranger, Meera, had stirred something dormant in him. He typed another message, slower this time. "I hope things are better tonight." A moment passed before her reply appeared. "Better. Noah's sleeping, and I'm still not sure you're real. That makes two of us." He set the phone down, exhaling. For the first time in years, the loneliness in the room didn't feel permanent. Days turned into a rhythm. Messages in the morning, questions at night. They never spoke on the phone, only words on a screen. But somehow, that was enough. Their conversations drifted from the ordinary to the personal. She told him about the lab, how she used to love the smell of ethanol and the quiet hum of centrifuges, how pregnancy had come unplanned, and how her academic career had vanished overnight. He listened, or read, silently. Then one evening, his reply came slower, heavier. "I know what it's like to lose something you built your whole life around." "What did you lose?" she asked. "My wife. 3 years ago, it was a medical mistake." Meera's hands froze over the keyboard. "I'm sorry," she wrote. "Don't be. Pain's just love with nowhere to go." She stared at that line, heart twisting. "That's beautiful," she finally wrote. "It's true," he replied. The conversation paused there, but something new hung between them, an understanding that neither of them wanted to name. Over the next few weeks, their messages became a quiet part of each other's lives. When Meera's mornings began, his nights ended. When his world of glass and steel grew too still, her warmth, clumsy, human, real, filled the silence. And though neither of them said it out loud, they both began to realize what started as a mistake was becoming something neither of them had expected. A connection stitched together by loneliness, honesty, and the smallest act of faith. That night, as snow once again fell over Chicago, Meera whispered to herself, "Who are you, really?" Across the city, Jackson looked out his window at the same storm and wondered the same thing. Only this time, he smiled. Winter had begun to loosen its grip on Chicago. The air was still cold, but the light lingered longer now. The kind of fragile brightness that makes people believe things might change. Meera Jensen had stopped waiting for miracles. Or at least that's what she told herself. She still talked to Jackson sometimes. Small things, harmless things. But every time his name appeared on her phone, something quiet and alive stirred in her chest. One morning, as she packed Noah's tiny shoes for daycare, her phone buzzed again. "Jackson, how would you feel about working again?" Meera blinked. "Working? Depends who's asking, me." She frowned. "Let me guess. You're opening a secret division for moms who texted the wrong number?" "Not exactly. Helix Core's starting a research unit on medical data integration." "You're qualified," she laughed out loud. "You're joking." "I don't joke about science, or hiring good people." "Jackson, are you—" She hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. "Are you trying to flirt professionally?" No, just offering a job. A job at your company? Yes. You can even bring Noah if you need to. Meera stared at the message, mouth slightly open. Bring Noah? Who says that? She exhaled slowly, half amused, half overwhelmed. You're insane. Probably. But we have health insurance. She couldn't help it. She laughed until tears filled her eyes. 2 weeks later, Meera stood at the base of Helix Core Tower, clutching Noah's hand. The building was all glass and steel, a monument to precision and power, and a far cry from her tiny apartment with the peeling paint. This is where the nice man works, she whispered to Noah. Noah nodded solemnly, holding his stuffed giraffe like an emotional support lawyer. Inside, the air smelled of polished marble and money. People moved fast, dressed perfectly. Meera felt her confidence shrink with every step toward the reception desk. Ms. Jensen? A woman in a gray suit asked. Mr. Albright is expecting you. Jackson was waiting in a conference room that looked out over half the city. He was dressed impeccably, of course, but his expression softened when he saw Noah. Good morning, he said. Morning, Meera replied, awkwardly shifting the diaper bag on her shoulder. Sorry for the entourage. Not at all, he said. He's welcome. Noah waved at him, then toddled over to the long table, and Mal, before anyone could react, grabbed a pen from a stack of documents and began to draw. Sweetheart, no. Meera lunged, but too late. Across the glossy surface of the CFO's printed report, a large purple dinosaur now grinned back at them. For a heartbeat, the room froze. Then Jackson laughed. Not a polite corporate laugh, a deep, genuine laugh that startled even him. The CFO blinked. Should I, print another copy? Jackson shook his head, still smiling. No, leave it. It's the most creative thing that's been on that page in months. Meera could feel her face burning. I'm so sorry, don't be, he said. Honestly, I needed that. Something in his voice, warm, human, made her look up. For the first time, she saw not the billionaire or the CEO, but a man simply trying to remember how to feel alive. A week later, she received the offer letter. Full-time position, research analyst, flexible hours, optional childcare. She stared at the email for nearly an hour before whispering, Is this real? It was. When she arrived for her first day, she found that Jackson had done something unheard of. Next to her office was a small room filled with bright cushions, toys, and a whiteboard labeled Noah's Lab. You didn't... She started when she saw it. I did, he interrupted with a small smile. I figured both of you deserved space to grow. She turned to him, eyes glistening. You didn't have to. I know, he said simply. But I wanted to. That day, something shifted. Not just for Meera, but for him too. Work suited her like an old rhythm rediscovered. She dove into projects with quiet determination, balancing spreadsheets and data models while still stopping to feed Noah or help him stack blocks. Within a week, she'd found a small discrepancy in Helix Core's financial system, a subtle data entry flaw that had gone unnoticed for months. Did you know your system's using an outdated tax variable? She told the finance team, pointing to the code. You're leaking around $200,000 annually. The CFO nearly choked on his coffee. Later that afternoon, Jackson appeared at her desk. You caught the error? Wasn't trying to, she said modestly. It just didn't look right. He studied her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. You have a rare gift, seeing what everyone else overlooks. She shrugged. It's just details. No, he said quietly. It's honesty, and that's rarer than you think. For a brief moment, their eyes met, not as CEO and employee, but as two people who had both forgotten what trust looked like until now. Evenings at Helix Core were different now. Noah's laughter drifted through the corridors. Meera's presence filled the sterile halls with something warmer. Life. Jackson often found himself lingering outside her office, pretending to check his phone while watching her work. Sometimes she'd look up, catch his gaze, and smile, and every time she did, something in him healed a little more. He'd built an empire on precision, efficiency, and control. But she, the woman who'd once texted him by accident, reminded him that life's most beautiful moments came from mistakes. One night, long after most employees had gone home, Meera was still at her desk. She didn't notice Jackson until he set a steaming cup of coffee beside her. "You should rest," he said softly. "I just wanted to finish checking the numbers." He leaned against the doorway, watching her. "You know," he said after a pause, "since you joined, this place feels different." She looked up. "Different good or different bad?" "Good," he said simply. "Like the air moves again." For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the city filled the silence. Then, as if afraid he'd said too much, Jackson straightened. "Good night, Meera." "Good night, Jackson." When he left, Meera sat back, heart fluttering. Outside, Chicago glittered under 1,000 tiny lights, and for the first time in years, she felt like she was part of something that mattered again. In a world that often rewarded pretense, she had shown him sincerity. And in a life that had long forgotten warmth, he had given her a chance. Not just to work again, but to believe again. Sometimes second chances don't come as miracles. Sometimes they come disguised as an email with the subject line, "Welcome to Helix Corps." Spring came to Chicago reluctantly. The air was still sharp, and the streets shimmered with puddles that reflected restless clouds. Inside Helix Corps' towering walls of glass, everything looked perfect. But Meera had learned that perfection often hid its own rot. It started with a small inconsistency. A number out of place, a figure that didn't quite add up. Meera had been reviewing the quarterly reports when she noticed the pattern. Subtle adjustments across multiple departments. All too neat, all too deliberate. At first, she thought it was a simple clerical mistake. But when she traced the source through layers of code and authorization logs, one name kept appearing. Vincent Harmon, Helix Corps' chief financial officer, the same man whose documents Noah had once decorated with a purple dinosaur. Meera leaned back, staring at the data. Her chest tightened. She could almost hear Jackson's voice in her head. "You have a rare gift, seeing what others overlook." Well, now she wished she hadn't. The next morning, she found Jackson in his office, or more accurately, she found him pacing like a caged animal, sleeves rolled up, eyes sharp with fatigue. "Something's wrong with the financial network," she said without preamble, closing the door behind her. He stopped. "How wrong?" "Wrong enough to make me nervous." She handed him her tablet, showing the report. He scrolled in silence, his jaw tightening with each line. "I knew it," he muttered finally. "You did?" He nodded. "I've suspected Vincent for months. The numbers never matched the project flow, but I didn't have proof." "Well," Meera said quietly, "you do now." For a long moment they said nothing. The air between them felt charged, not just with tension, but something unspoken, a trust that had been quietly building. Jackson set the tablet down. "We need to be careful. If Vincent realizes we're on to him, he'll bury this before we can act." Meera crossed her arms. "So what's the plan, boss?" He almost smiled. "You just volunteered to go undercover." She blinked. "Excuse me? You're new. He won't suspect you. Work closely with the accounting system, collect evidence quietly." "Oh, great," she said dryly, "because nothing says fun week like financial espionage." He chuckled, a low, genuine sound that made her pulse skip. "You'll be fine. You're better at this than you think." They started meeting after hours, in his office, sometimes the break room, sometimes over takeout boxes of pad thai that Meera insisted on paying for, and Jackson kept ignoring. They'd work side by side, screens glowing in the dim light, their banter weaving through lines of data and half-finished coffee cups. "Your laptop's locked," Meera said one evening, reaching for it. "Use my password," Jackson murmured, eyes still on the screen. "What is it?" "Jackson 23, she froze, slowly turned toward him. "You're kidding." He looked up, completely serious. "What? Jackson 23? You're a billionaire and that's your password?" He shrugged. "It's efficient." She stared at him in disbelief, then burst out laughing. "You run one of the biggest tech firms in America, and you use a password that could be guessed by a toddler." "Security's overrated," he said, trying not to smile, Tell that to your board of directors when your emails get hacked by a 12-year-old named Kevin. He laughed then. Really laughed, head thrown back. The sound filled the quiet office, and for a brief, beautiful moment, they weren't a CEO and an analyst hunting corruption. They were just two people, exhausted and alive. But beneath the laughter, tension simmered. As days turned into nights, their messages grew longer, their silences heavier. Sometimes, Meera caught him looking at her when he thought she wasn't watching, a fleeting softness behind the sharp precision of his gaze. Sometimes she looked back. He'd become her safe place, and yet he terrified her. His world, polished, powerful, filled with people who wore masks as naturally as suits, was nothing like hers. And she knew how easily people like her got lost in worlds like that. For Jackson, the fear was different. He hadn't let anyone this close since Claire. Meera's laughter, her warmth, the way she filled his office with life, it all threatened to undo the careful distance he'd built. But every time she smiled at him, he wondered if maybe distance wasn't what he needed anymore. One late evening, Meera was going through system archives when she found it. The evidence they needed. Hidden under layers of encrypted files was a trail of redirected payments, disguised as vendor invoices, all leading back to Vincent Harmon. She printed the logs, her hands trembling slightly. When Jackson walked in, she looked up, eyes bright with both triumph and fear. "We got him." He took the papers, scanning them quickly. "This is solid. He can't talk his way out of this." For a moment, neither spoke. They just stood there, side by side, watching the city lights flicker through the window, knowing that what they'd uncovered could burn everything down. Finally, Jackson turned to her. His voice was softer now. "You didn't have to get involved in this." She met his eyes. "I wanted to. I trust you." Something shifted in his expression. The storm didn't hit all at once. It began as whispers in hallways, sidelong glances that lingered a second too long. Then, like every scandal in the digital age, it exploded overnight. Meera arrived at Helix Corp on a Monday morning to find the lobby unusually crowded. Phones flashed. Faces turned. A security guard avoided her gaze as he handed her a folded newspaper. Her heart stopped. Across the front page, Helix Corp scandal, CEO's mistress or whistleblower. Beneath it, a grainy photo. Her, walking beside Jackson in the rain. His coat around her shoulders. The headline made it look like a love affair, not a late night after work. Her hands trembled. Around her, she could hear the low hum of whispers. That's her. The single mom. He bought her the job. By the time she reached her office, her phone was exploding. Social media had done its job. Memes, hashtags, parody videos. One showed a cartoon of her pushing a stroller filled with cash. Captioned, "Baby's first stock options." Another read, "Breaking, billionaire falls for budget Cinderella." If it hadn't been her life, it might have been funny. She locked herself in the bathroom, sank to the floor, and tried not to cry. But the tears came anyway, hot, furious, helpless. She had fought so hard to stand on her own, and now the world had turned her strength into a punchline. Meanwhile, Jackson's office was chaos. PR calls, board members shouting. Vincent Harmon, the CFO, was at the center of it all, his voice calm, measured, dripping with false concern. "I warned you, Jackson," Vincent said smoothly. "Getting personally involved with an employee is bad optics, especially one who just happened to access sensitive financial data." Jackson's jaw tightened. "You leaked it." Vincent raised a brow. "I don't know what you're implying. But the timing's unfortunate, don't you think? Perhaps she manipulated you. For access. For money. For sympathy. Enough." Jackson's voice was low but sharp. "You're done talking." Vincent smiled faintly. The kind of smile that said, "I've already won." When Jackson finally found Meera, she was standing in the employee parking lot, holding Noah's stuffed giraffe and staring into nothing. "Meera, don't," she said quietly. "It's everywhere, Jackson. My face, my name. They're calling me your mistress." "I know. I didn't ask for this." I know. She turned to him then, eyes glassy with exhaustion. I can't stay here. I can't walk those halls and see them look at me like I'm... He took a step closer. If you leave now, he said softly, he wins twice. Her breath caught. He ruins your name, Jackson continued, and he buries the truth. Don't give him both. Meera looked at him. The man who had once been just a name on her phone, now standing before her like the only solid thing left in a collapsing world. After a long silence, she nodded. Then we fight. Enter. Keller. Special Agent Margaret Keller, retired FBI forensic investigator, was not what Meera expected. 60-something, sharp as a scalpel, dressed in floral scarves and carrying a thermos of black coffee like a weapon. I don't do charity cases, Keller said the moment Jackson introduced her, but corruption pisses me off more than arthritis. Pleasure to meet you, Meera managed weakly. Keller smirked. Don't thank me yet, sweetheart. You'll be knee-deep in spreadsheets before lunch. Within hours, she was tearing through Helix Corps' database like a hurricane in pearls. This CFO of yours, she muttered, either thinks he's smarter than the system, or that everyone else is too stupid to check. Meera and Jackson worked beside her, sometimes until dawn. The office became a war room. Stacks of financial reports, cold pizza boxes, late-night caffeine runs. Between strategy sessions, there were rare moments of laughter. Like the time Keller looked at Jackson's computer and barked, "Password, please." Jackson 123, Meera said before he could answer. Deadpan Keller blinked. You're kidding me. I wish I were. Keller sighed. And they made you a billionaire? Even Jackson laughed, a low, self-deprecating rumble that cut through the exhaustion. Days turned into weeks. The investigation tightened like a noose. Keller found trails of offshore accounts, shell corporations, falsified vendor invoices, all leading to Vincent. Finally, they had everything. At dawn, Jackson stood at the head of the boardroom table. Eyes cold, evidence spread before him. Meera sat beside Keller, clutching a folder filled with every proof they'd gathered. Vincent entered, smug as ever, until Jackson slid a document across the table. These, Jackson said evenly, are copies of the transactions you authorized under false accounts. Vincent's smirk faltered. And this, Keller added, tapping another sheet, is the subpoena. I'd get a lawyer, but from what I've seen, you can't afford one. The room went still. Vincent opened his mouth, but before he could speak, 2 federal agents entered the boardroom. Vincent Harmon, one said. You're under arrest for corporate fraud and obstruction of justice. As they cuffed him, Vincent looked at Jax. Spring finally bloomed for real this time. Soft sun on glass towers, tulips pushing through the stubborn Chicago soil, and a kind of quiet that felt like peace. Inside Helix Corps, the storm had passed. Reporters had moved on to the next scandal, investors had regained confidence, and Jackson Albright's name was no longer paired with Meera Jensen's in gossip headlines, but in press releases, ones that read, New Era of Transparency. And at the center of it all, Meera had a new office. The brass plaque on the frosted glass door read, Meera Jensen, Head of Internal Audit. Every time she saw it, she smiled, not out of pride, but disbelief. The single mom who once texted a stranger begging for milk money was now leading the very department that guarded integrity at one of the biggest companies in America. But despite the promotion, Meera never moved out of her old apartment. The cracked walls, the creaky radiator, the window that whistled in the wind, they reminded her where it all began. When Jackson asked her why, she only shrugged. Some places keep you honest. Helix Corps had changed too. The sterile, cold hallways now carried laughter, mostly Noah's. Jackson had kept the daycare room beside Meera's office and turned it into a company-supported childcare. Pilot employees joked that it was Noah's department, and no one argued. That afternoon, Meera stood by her office window, watching her son play with blocks while sunlight streamed across the floor. A knock sounded at the door. Busy? She turned. Jackson stood there, casual for once. No tie, just a soft gray shirt and that small, cautious smile she'd come to know too well. "Just auditing the snack inventory," she teased. "We might be running low on animal crackers." "I'll have procurement handle it," she laughed. "Of course you will." He hesitated, then stepped closer. "You know, there's something I never said." Meera tilted her head. "That's a first." Jackson's expression softened. "Everyone thought I saved you that night, when you sent the wrong message." "You kind of did," she said lightly. He shook his head. "No, you're the one who saved me. I didn't even realize how lonely I'd become until you barged into my world with a crying baby and a pizza receipt." She smiled, warmth rising to her cheeks. "I have a talent for chaos, and I needed that," he admitted. "You reminded me what being human feels like." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was calm, easy, but charged with all the things they'd never said. Then, from across the room, Noah piped up, his voice bright and curious. "Mommy, is he my boss or my daddy now?" The silence broke, first with Meera's gasp, then Jackson's low, uncontrollable laugh. "Oh my God, Noah," Meera said, covering her face. Jackson grinned. "Good question, kid. I've been wondering that myself." Meera threw a pen at him, half embarrassed, half amused. "Don't encourage him." Noah giggled. "So, both?" They looked at each other, and the laughter faded into something softer. Jackson reached out, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and said quietly, "Maybe both." She felt her heart stutter, not in surprise, but in recognition. And then, as sunlight spilled across the room, he leaned in, slow, hesitant, certain, and kissed her. A gentle, lingering promise. When they finally pulled apart, Meera whispered, "So, what now?" Jackson smiled, eyes bright. "Now, we start right." He glanced toward Noah, who was happily stacking blocks, and added playfully, "Guess that wrong number finally dialed the right heart." Meera laughed, that bright, unguarded laugh he'd fallen for from the very beginning. Outside, the city buzzed with life, unaware that somewhere high above, 3 lives had quietly intertwined, not through fate or fortune, but through one tiny mistake that turned out to be the best accident of all. Threads of Fate is a story about how the smallest mistake can change the course of 2 lives forever. What begins as a wrong number, a desperate text from a struggling single mother to a stranger, becomes a journey of healing, courage, and unexpected love. At its heart, the story carries a timeless message, that kindness knows no class, no title, and no distance. When Meera Jensen, a woman fighting to protect her son and her dignity, crosses paths with Jackson Albright, a man who has everything except connection, their worlds collide in the most human way possible. Through humor, honesty, and trust, they discover that compassion can bridge even the widest gap between people. Threads of Fate also celebrates strong women, not as people who need saving, but as individuals who rise because someone finally believes in them. Meera doesn't find salvation in wealth or romance. She finds it in her own resilience, her intelligence, and her ability to stay true to herself in a world quick to judge. Jackson doesn't rescue her. She rescues him. From loneliness, fear, and the emptiness of success without meaning. The story reminds us that every act of goodness, no matter how small, can ripple through another life in ways we can't predict. Sometimes the right connection comes disguised as a mistake. Ultimately, Threads of Fate isn't just a love story. It's a quiet reflection on faith in people, in second chances, and in the power of empathy. Because sometimes, a wrong number doesn't lead to the wrong person at all. It leads exactly where the heart was meant to go.